The paper tore slightly as small clawed fingers grabbed it too eagerly. Lily pulled back her hand just in time to avoid a scratch and watched the crimson-scaled cub examine his gift. It was a folded figure, a tiny version of himself breathing fire, made from the last clean page of her notebook. She had been at the Draken Imperial Training Academy on Ashfall for 6 months now. The volcanic world churned beneath black stone floors, sending steam through cracks in the training pit. 12 cubs gathered here every morning to learn combat from Instructor Grath. And every morning, Lily sat on a boulder at the far edge, watching and drawing. The cubs ranged from deep red to pure black in their scaled hides. They stood about 4 feet tall with claws that could extend and retract like cats. Small fire glands in their throats were still developing. Most could only produce sparks or heated gas. True flame would come with age. Headmaster Varen had brought her here after the rescue ships found her. She had been floating in debris for 11 days, wrapped around a broken stasis pod. Her parents and brother had not survived the colony ship crash. She stopped speaking after they told her. Rhys, the crimson cub, showed his paper figure to the others. They crowded around, pointing at the tiny folded wings and the suggestion of flame at its mouth. A large, black-scaled cub named Dorn approached Lily with careful steps. She reached into her pocket and produced another figure. This one showed a bigger cub in a defensive stance, strong and protective. Dorn took it with surprising gentleness for someone with natural weapons on every finger. He tucked it into a pouch at his belt without a word. Instructor Grath arrived through the eastern gate. He was massive, even by adult Draken standards. Battle scars crossed his body like a map of violence. His left eye was missing, replaced by a smooth patch of darker scales. Half his tail had been lost to some ancient combat. The cubs scrambled into formation. Lily returned to her boulder and opened her notebook to a fresh page. Grath surveyed his students with his remaining eye. His gaze lingered on the human girl longer than necessary. He had made his feelings about her presence clear in subtle ways over these months. A comment about fragile species here, a pointed lesson about prey animals there. Today he announced a lesson on species assessment. Holographic projectors hummed to life, displaying various galactic races, crystalli with their gem-like bodies, Vorn with their 4 arms. Each species received analysis of strengths and weaknesses. When the human projection appeared, Grath's voice changed. It became something between lecture and accusation. Humans, he explained, possessed no natural weapons. Their skin could be pierced by a cub's first claws. They could not regulate internal temperature. They healed slowly. They required constant hydration and nutrition. Everything about them screamed weakness. Several cubs glanced toward Lily's boulder. She kept her eyes on her notebook, pencil moving in steady strokes. Grath continued. He spoke of how humans survived only through deception and cowardice. They used tools because their bodies had failed them. They formed groups because alone they were nothing. Any Draken cub could kill an adult human without effort. Rhys shifted uncomfortably. He remembered how Lily had bandaged his tail last month when he burned it practicing. She had used clean cloth and a cooling salve she made herself. His tail had healed faster than anyone expected. Dorn recalled the water she shared during the desert march 3 weeks ago. He had dropped his canteen and she simply handed him hers. She went thirsty so he would not. The other cubs held similar memories, small kindnesses accumulated over 6 months, paper figures and shared rations and quiet waves each morning. She learned all their names within the first week. She drew each of them as heroes in her notebook. Grath dismissed the class for midday meal. The cubs filed out, but several looked back at Lily. She remained on her boulder, adding final details to her current drawing. It showed all 12 cubs standing together, flames rising behind them like a wall of protection. The instructor waited until the cubs had gone. He approached Lily's position with heavy steps that made the stone vibrate. She did not look up. Tomorrow, he said, would feature a special demonstration. He wanted the cubs to understand certain truths about the galaxy, about weakness and strength. about what belonged at the academy and what did not. Lily's pencil paused for just a moment. Then she continued drawing. Grath walked away with something hungry in his expression. He had lost his clutch brother to human mercenaries 40 cycles ago. That wound had never closed. This small, silent girl represented everything he had grown to hate. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She only knew that for the first time in 6 months, she felt something other than empty. These cubs, these strange, scaled children with fire in their throats, had begun filling the hollow space the crash had carved in her chest. That night in her small room, Lily made 12 more paper figures, each one different, each one showing a cub at their finest. She would give them out tomorrow morning. She did not know it would be the morning everything changed. Gray ash fell like snow that had forgotten how to be white. Lily walked through the training grounds with her pockets full of paper figures. The volcanic sky above Ashfall had darkened overnight, casting everything in muted shadow. The cubs gathered in their usual spot. They noticed the weather too, trading uncertain glances. Something felt different today. The air carried weight it had not held before. Lily distributed her gifts as the cubs arrived. Each figure had taken her hours to fold. Rhys received a version of himself mid-leap, claws extended. A female cub named Sola got one showing her in a victory pose. Twin cubs called Ash and Cinder received matching figures standing back to back. A tiny cub named Pebble, usually the most timid of the group, held his paper self up to the dim light. It showed him standing tall, much taller than he actually was, breathing a flame he had not yet mastered. His eyes grew wet and he quickly looked away. Dorn accepted his second figure with a nod. This one showed him shielding something smaller with his bulk. He did not know how much that image would mean by day's end. Instructor Grath arrived earlier than normal. His movements held purpose that made the cubs straighten faster than usual. He carried something at his belt that had not been there before, a blade in ceremonial sheath, old and worn but clearly sharp. Today, he announced, required practical demonstration. Theory could only teach so much. The cubs needed to understand certain realities through direct observation. He called Lily forward. The human girl closed her notebook slowly. She placed her pencil in its usual spot. Then she stood and walked toward the center of the training pit. Her feet made no sound on the black stone. The cubs watched her approach. Rhys felt his fire gland pulse with heat he did not command. Dorn's claws extended without his permission. Grath began circling the small human. He pointed out her. Physical deficiencies with clinical precision. Thin skin that could not stop even a practice blow. Bones that would snap under moderate pressure. No scales, no claws, no fire, no natural defense of any kind. He poked her shoulder with one claw. The force made her stumble. Several cubs hissed. The sound was involuntary, rising from somewhere deep in their chests. Grath smiled at their reaction. He called it exactly the weakness he meant to address. Sympathy for inferior species would doom them in real combat. Enemies exploited such sentiment. Their human pet had made them soft. Pet, the word hung in the air like smoke. Lily stood very still. Her hands had begun to shake. Memories flashed behind her eyes, the crash, the darkness, the bodies she could not help, 11 days of waiting to die. Grath leaned close to her face. He spoke of demonstrations that left lasting impressions, lessons that cubs would remember forever. He asked if she understood what was about to happen. She did not answer. She had not spoken in 6 months. The instructor straightened and addressed the cubs. He explained that humans broke easily. Their minds shattered from trauma. Their bodies failed from minor damage. Today's demonstration would show exactly how fragile humanity truly was. He raised his clawed hand. The cubs saw it happen in slow motion, the massive arm rising, the natural weapons catching volcanic light, the clear intent to strike a child who had never harmed anyone. Lily closed her eyes. Rhys moved first. His small body launched across the pit before his mind caught up to his muscles. He did not think about regulations or respect or consequences. He only knew that the human who drew him as a hero was about to be hurt. His claws found Grath's forearm. His fire gland released everything it had. Superheated gas sprayed across the instructor's face. Grath roared, the sound shook ash from the sky. Then the other cubs moved. Dorn hit the instructor's legs like a battering ram. Ash and Cinder coordinated their attack on his weapon arm. Sola went for his good eye. Pebble, tiny Pebble who feared everything, sank his teeth into Grath's tail with enough force to draw blood. 12 cubs against 1 adult. It should not have been a contest. But they had surprise. They had numbers. They had fury born from 6 months of small kindnesses and paper figures, and shared water and quiet morning waves. Grath went down. The cubs piled onto him, pinning his arms and legs. Their combined hissing sounded like a furnace reaching critical heat. Claws and teeth found every gap in his defenses. Lily opened her eyes. She saw her cubs, her strange, scaled family, bleeding and snarling and fighting for her. They had positioned their bodies between her and the fallen instructor, a wall of scales and fire and absolute refusal to let her be harmed. Something cracked in her chest, not breaking, healing. She whispered a single word, her first in 6 months. "Stop." The cubs heard her, they froze mid-attack. Even Grath stopped struggling. Then a shadow fell across the entire training pit. Headmaster Varen descended from the observation platform above. His wings spread to their full span, blocking out what little light remained. His ancient eyes surveyed the scene below. Cubs covered in ash and blood, an instructor pinned to the ground, and a small human girl with tears streaming down her face, speaking for the first time since her world ended. The headmaster landed with thunderous weight. "Explain," he said. Everyone tried to speak at once. Headmaster Varen was old. 200 cycles had carved patience into his bones. He had fought in wars that cubs now learned about in history lessons. He had signed treaties that reshaped entire sectors. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until now. 12 cubs stood in a protective ring around a human child. Their instructor lay bleeding on the ground. The training pit smelled of copper and smoke and something he could not name. Perhaps it was the scent of change. "One at a time," he commanded. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Grath spoke first. He pushed himself upright, wiping blood from a dozen small wounds. His words came fast and bitter. He spoke of discipline and tradition and the corruption of Draken values. These cubs had attacked their superior to defend a human. They had broken sacred protocols. They deserved expulsion at minimum. Varen listened without expression. When Grath finished, the headmaster turned to the cubs. Riss stepped forward. Ash still fell around them, dusting his crimson scales gray. He spoke simply. Instructor Grath was going to hurt Lily. They stopped him. That was all. The other cubs nodded. Dorn added that the instructor had called Lily a pet. Sola mentioned the raised hand, the clear intent to strike. Pebble, still shaking from his own courage, showed the ceremonial blade. Grath had been carrying. Varen examined the weapon, old but sharp, capable of doing real damage to soft human skin. He turned to Lily. The human girl had not moved from her spot. Cubs surrounded her like living armor. Her cheeks were wet with tears, but her eyes held something that had not been there before, something awake. "Child," Varen said gently, "did he strike you?" Lily shook her head. "Did he threaten to?" She nodded. "And these cubs defended you?" Another nod, then in a voice rough from 6 months of silence, she added 4 words. "They are my family." Varen felt something shift in his chest. He had adopted this child as an experiment, a test to see if young Drakens could move beyond their species' prejudices. He had watched from observation platforms as she drew pictures and shared water and made paper figures. He had hoped but never expected this. The cubs had not just tolerated her, they had claimed her, they had bled for her. Grath interrupted. He demanded the headmaster remember his duty. Draken purity required distance from lesser species. The cub's actions proved exactly the corruption he had warned against. This human had infected them with weakness. Weakness? Varen repeated the word slowly. He looked at the dozen small warriors who had attacked an armed adult without hesitation. He looked at their wounds, their protective stance, their absolute refusal to abandon their charge. You call this weakness? He approached Grath directly. The instructor stood his ground, but something flickered in his remaining eye. Varen spoke quietly. He asked why Grath truly hated humans. The official reasons were well known, but what had actually happened? Grath's composure cracked. His voice broke as he spoke of his clutch brother. They had grown up together, trained together, served together. Then human mercenaries had ambushed their patrol. He had listened to his brother scream for 3 hours before the silence came. He had carried that sound for 40 cycles. Every human face reminded him of it. This small girl with her quiet ways and paper figures had become a target for grief he never processed. I wanted her to feel what he felt, Grath admitted. I wanted her to know fear. Lily stepped forward. The cubs parted reluctantly to let her through. She walked toward the instructor who had meant to harm her. Her small feet left prints in the ash-covered ground. She stopped in front of Grath. I know. Fear, she said. Each word came slow and careful, like she was remembering how speech worked. I spent 11 days with my family after the crash. They were dead. I could not leave them. I talked to them even though they could not hear. I was afraid every second. Grath stared at her. I do not hate you, Lily continued. You are sad and angry because someone you loved is gone. I understand. I am sad and angry too, but hurting me will not bring him back, just like hurting you will not bring my parents back. She reached out and touched his scarred snout with one small hand. The gesture was gentle, almost tender. I forgive you, she said, not because you deserve it, because I am tired of carrying heavy things. Grath's legs buckled. The massive instructor fell to his knees in the volcanic dust. A sound escaped him that the cubs had never heard. It took them a moment to realize he was crying. Varen watched his student and his instructor share a moment of grief across species lines. Two survivors of different tragedies finding common ground in loss. This was not what he had expected when he started his experiment. This was better. He announced his judgment. Grath would be relieved of teaching duties and sent for mind healing. The cubs would face no punishment. Their actions represented Draken values at their finest. Protecting those who could not protect themselves was not weakness. It was the foundation of every great warrior code. And Lily, she was no longer a guest at the academy. She was a student. The cubs erupted in celebration. They swarmed around Lily with careful embraces. Riss declared himself her official guardian. Dorn simply stood close, his presence a promise. Varen permitted himself a small smile. The experiment had exceeded all expectations. 6 weeks passed on Ashfall. The volcanic world continued its slow churn beneath black stone. Seasons did not exist here, only variations in ash fall and steam pressure. But inside the academy, something had fundamentally changed. Lily wore the training uniform now, modified for human physiology. It covered her from neck to ankle in heat-resistant fabric. She could not match the cubs in fire resistance, but she no longer sat on the edge watching. She trained beside them. Her role had evolved naturally. She could not breathe fire or extend claws, but she could see patterns the cubs missed. Her human eyes tracked movement differently. Her brain processed information in ways Draken minds did not. During formation drills, she stood at the center. The cubs moved around her in practiced coordination. She called out adjustments in Draken battle tongue, which she had learned with startling speed. Her voice had returned fully now, though she still spoke less than most humans. Their new instructor, a female warrior named Tessra, watched with professional approval. She had been skeptical when assigned to this unusual class. A human among Draken cubs seemed like a recipe for disaster. Instead, she found something she had never encountered in 50 cycles of teaching. The cubs fought better with Lily among them, not despite her differences, but because of them. She balanced their aggression with strategy. She cooled their natural impulse to charge with calculated patience. They protected her with ferocity, and she directed that ferocity with precision. Riss had become her shadow. Where she went, he followed. His fire breath had improved dramatically, partly from extra practice and partly from wanting to impress her. He showed her his flames each evening, seeking the approval he had come to crave. Dorn remained her silent guardian. He rarely spoke, but his position was always clear, between Lily and any potential threat. His black scales had grown darker over the weeks, a sign of approaching adolescence. His protective instincts had grown stronger, too. The paper figures Lily made had become academy legend. Cubs from other classes requested them. She spent evenings folding, creating tiny versions of young Drakons throughout the facility. Each figure showed its subject as a hero. Each one was treasured. Grath had not returned to teaching. He remained in the Mind Healing Center, working through 4 decades of buried grief. Word reached Lily that he had asked about her, not with hatred, but with something closer to curiosity. She sent him a paper figure. It showed a Draken warrior at peace, flames extinguished, resting. The Academy's transformation attracted attention beyond Ashfall. Whispers spread through diplomatic channels. A human child had not only survived among Drakons, but had been integrated into their most sacred institution. Some called it impossible, others called it dangerous. A very few, called it hope. Headmaster Varen received communications from across the sector. Drakon traditionalists demanded the human be removed. Human rights groups demanded she be rescued. Politicians saw opportunity, generals saw threat. Everyone had opinions about a situation none of them truly understood. He ignored them all. What mattered was what happened in the training pit each day. What mattered was 12 cubs and 1 human girl building something that had never existed before. What mattered was the small moments that no outsider could see. Like when Lily woke screaming from nightmares and found warm, scaled bodies already surrounding her. The cubs had learned to sense her distress in sleep. They would gather around her bed without waking, their combined heat soothing her back to rest. Like when Pebble finally produced his first true flame, and Lily was the first to cheer. Her enthusiasm seemed to mean more to him than any instructor's approval. He practiced for hours afterward, determined to show her an even better flame tomorrow. Like when Ash and Cinder got into a fight and Lily sat between them until they calmed. She did not speak or intervene. She simply existed as a neutral presence until their anger burned out. They apologized to each other while she sketched them in her notebook. Tessra reported these observations to Varen. The headmaster recorded them for the archives. Someday, scholars would study what happened here. They would try to understand how a silent, traumatized human child had become the heart of a Drakon pack. They would probably get it wrong. The truth was simpler than any academic theory. Lily had arrived broken. The cubs had arrived incomplete. Together, they had filled each other's missing pieces. She gave them focus and purpose and the particular kind of loyalty that humans seem to generate naturally. They gave her family and protection and a reason to speak again. On the 6-week anniversary of the incident, Lily did something unexpected. She asked to visit Grath. Varen hesitated. The instructor's healing was progressing but remained fragile. A confrontation could undo cycles of work. Lily insisted. She said she owed him something. They found Grath in the meditation gardens. He looked smaller than before, quieter. His remaining eye held uncertainty rather than anger. Lily approached alone. The cubs waited at the garden's edge, ready but restrained. She handed Grath a new paper figure. This one showed 2 figures, Drakon and human, standing side by side. Neither was fighting, neither was afraid. They simply existed together. "I made this for you," she said, "so you remember that peace is possible." Grath held the small paper creation like it was made of glass. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Thank you," he managed. I will try to remember. Lily nodded and returned to her cubs. They surrounded her immediately, touching and checking and confirming she was unharmed. She smiled. She had not smiled in 7 months. 3 months after the incident, ships arrived from distant stars. A Galactic Council delegation had requested formal observation of what diplomats were calling the Ashfall experiment. Their shuttle descended through volcanic clouds with the precision of practiced politics. The delegation included 2 Draken senators from the homeworld, a Crystalli observer with a body like living gemstone, and a human ambassador named Grace Okonkwo, who had traveled 17 days specifically to see a child she had never met. Headmaster Varen greeted them at the landing platform. He had prepared speeches about integration protocols and educational methodology. He had statistics ready, improvement metrics, behavioral assessments. Politicians loved data. Ambassador Okonkwo asked only one question: where was the girl? They found her in the training pit. 13 figures moved across black stone in perfect synchronization. 12 Draken cubs and 1 small human formed patterns that shifted like water. Lily stood at their center, calling commands in flawless battle tongue. The cubs responded before she finished speaking. They knew her signals, her gestures, her silences. The delegation watched in silence. Tessera explained what they were seeing. This was a rescue extraction drill. The cubs had to reach a target point while avoiding simulated hostiles. Lily provided tactical awareness. She read the field and directed movement. The cubs provided overwhelming force when needed. They completed the drill in half the expected time. Ambassador Okonkwo wiped her eyes. She had spent 20 years fighting for human recognition in galactic politics. She had argued before councils and senates. She had written papers and given speeches, but she had never imagined seeing this. A human child commanding Draken warriors through trust alone. She requested a private meeting with Lily. Varen hesitated but agreed. They sat in the headmaster's garden, surrounded by volcanic blooms in impossible colors. Okonkwo studied the girl across from her, small and scarred and quiet, but something burned behind those eyes that had not been there in the rescue reports. I came to offer you a choice, the ambassador said. There are human colonies that would welcome you, families eager to adopt a survivor from the Horizon crash. You could grow up among your own species. You could have a normal life. Lily considered the offer seriously. She had learned to respect direct questions. Would my pack come with me? Okonkwo had expected this. No, Draken cubs cannot leave the academy until they reach maturity. You would have to go alone. Lily shook her head slowly. Then I stay. May I ask why? The girl was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice held weight beyond her years. My human family died trying to reach a new home. I loved them. I miss them every day. But they are gone. I cannot bring them back by running towards something that reminds me of them. She looked out at the volcanic landscape. These cubs found me when I was empty. They filled me up. I drew them as heroes and they became heroes. They bled for me. How do I leave that? Some would say they are not your kind. Lily smiled. It was a small expression, hard-won and genuine. Before the crash, I did not know Drakens existed. Now 12 of them have become my family. Maybe kind is not about species. Maybe it is about who shows up when you need them. Okonkwo had no response to that. She had expected a traumatized child. She found instead someone who had rebuilt herself from broken pieces and emerged stronger. The delegation stayed for 3 days. They observed training sessions and meal times and the sleeping arrangements where cubs piled around their human packmate. They documented everything. Their report would change galactic policy. The Ashfall model, as it came to be known, proved that species integration could work when built on genuine connection rather than political mandate. Other academies would attempt to replicate it. Most would fail. The original remained unique. On the final evening, Grath appeared at the training pit. His healing had progressed enough for supervised visits. The cubs tensed at his approach, but Lily raised her hand and they relaxed. The former instructor knelt before her. In formal Draken tradition, he spoke words of apology, not for protocol, but because she deserved to hear them. His voice cracked but held. Lily placed her palm against his scarred snout. The gesture had become their ritual: touch without violence, connection without fear. "I forgave you months ago," she reminded him. "Now you need to forgive yourself." Grath nodded. It would take time, perhaps a lifetime, but he would try. The delegation departed the next morning. Ambassador Okonkwo made one final offer. If Lily ever changed her mind, humanity would welcome her home. Lily thanked her and returned to her pack. That night she sat on her original boulder with her notebook. The cubs sprawled around her in comfortable chaos. Wrist pressed against her left side. Dorn lay at her feet like a scaled guardian. The others filled every remaining space. She worked on a new drawing, 13 figures standing together, scales and skin, claws and fingernails, fire and patience, all of them facing outward, ready to meet whatever came next. Pebble looked over her shoulder and asked what it showed. Lily held up the finished image. Volcanic light caught the pencil lines. "This is what family looks like now," she said. Around her, 12 cubs hummed their approval. The sound resonated through the stone beneath them, through the volcanic heart of Ashfall, through the foundations of everything they had built together. A silent girl had found her voice. A pack had found its purpose. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the universe made room for something that had never existed before.